Hello and welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're not taking a look at one Holosun EPS, we're taking a look at two of them. More specifically, the solar-powered red circle dot and the green non-solar-powered green dot. Simple as that. This one, the red version, was sent to me graciously by the guys over at arftac.com. If you need anything for your AR or you want to buy some optics, check them out. They do have discount codes for all their optics and mounts. Code C does. They're really good dudes. They run a fairly small business, but very successful. Really good competitive pricing on stuff. So please support them and myself and yourself by buying stuff at a slightly different price from the guys over at arftac.com. Tell them I sent you. As far as the green 6MY dot, this was graciously sent in by the guys over at Holosun. After I had my hands on this red circle dot, I was curious to see what the green 6MY would be like. So I sent them an email. They graciously replied and sent me this. Now, why did they send me a non-solar powered version? Well, number one, it's an option that they have for the non-solar powered or the solar powered, but they're also a little bit cheaper. And we're going to touch on that very soon. Nevertheless, I am super appreciative of the guys over at Holosun, so thank you very much for sending this in. Combined, these two have a little bit over 1,000 rounds on this pistol. This is my M&P competitor. This is my main squeeze and the gun that I run basically everything with. And I'm delighted to report that I've had not a single issue, rain or shine. And from what I've seen online and read on other comments, these haven't really had any problems whatsoever, which is going to be the main point of contention for the solar-powered versus the non-solar-powered version. Is it worth the extra $100 that you can get the solar-powered version for over the non-solar-powered version? That's right, this is about $430. This one's around $330. So for a lot of you, that's going to sway you one way versus the other. But there's more to it than just the cost. It's the reticle style and the reticle color and whether or not you want more things to possibly fail on you in the field. So with that, for $330, you can get the non-solar powered version in the red or green 2MY or 6MY dot configuration. And with the solar powered, you can basically get all of them. In fact, you can get both of these, either style, with basically any reticle that you want. The only difference is going to be the price and the solar power feature, which is a little bit odder than I expected because both of these are rated from Holosun's website at 50,000 hours worth of battery life. In fact, the only difference between these two is the fact that with the solar powered version, you get auto brightness, where you don't get it with the non-solar powered version. That kind of makes sense. Weight-wise, they're exactly the same weight at 1.4 ounces. Externally, they're the exact same with the exception of the solar panel. They both have shake awake. They both have the exact same button configuration. They're identical with the exception of the color and size of the dot. So we're going to be taking a look at that side by side very soon. Because if you're like me, you don't know what's going to work best for you until you really get behind it and test it. And I've come to grips with these as being completely different optics than you might expect. So without further ado, let's get behind both of these and see what they're all about. I've said all there is to really say with these two, with the exception that they both have the same IPX8 water resistance, which should mean that they're submersible for quite some time at quite some depth. So if you handle these in the rain like I have, you should have no problems. Let's talk about the overall size of the reticles first and what you could really expect from them. 2MY versus 6MY is, about 3 times the size difference one versus the other. If you were to put this on a paper target at 100 yards, I'll try to paint a picture for you. A 2MY dot is going to be 2 inches. A 6MY dot is going to be, guess what, 6 inches. And for many of you that don't shoot a lot of pistol, you're going to say, wow, 6 inches at 100 yards, that's really, really big. But keep in mind, this is going on a pistol more than likely. At 100 yards, you good enough to shoot, let's say, 5 or even 10 rounds inside of a 6-inch target at 100 yards out of your pistol? For many people, probably not. I know I'm certainly not that good, but I do like the 6MY dot a lot more on a pistol because it draws my eye to it a lot easier. To help you understand the dot size even further, let's cut the distance in half again to 50 yards. Now it's a 3-inch circle at 50 yards. Again in half, you're talking about at 25 yards, 1.5 inches, and at 12-ish yards, you're only talking about a 3/4 inch dot. It's really not that big when you really think of it. The 2MY dot is going to be 1/3 the size, so cut all of those in 1/3, and there you have it. Dot size is only one part of the equation. The other part is going to be overall lens distortion and color distortion. On the right, the green MOA dot versus the red dot on the left is going to have much less tint to the glass as opposed to the red. I don't know why this is. I'm sure there's some sort of calculation that all these companies have to crunch numbers into and have it spit out. And for whatever reason, the green, as you can see, it has almost no visible tint to the glass, whereas the red very clearly has a bluish green tint to it. As far as how the dots look, the circle dot on the left, that circle really does distort at the far extremes, but the dots, whether it's the 2MY or the 6MY, do not distort on the extremes. They remain a very nice, sharp circle. As far as the emitters from the front, both of them are visible. These are both the same brightness. I do have to say that the green dot is a little bit more visible from the front, but if you're worried about someone seeing you, or at least seeing your emitter from the front, you're so close it doesn't really matter. Another area, though, where it's going to play a little bit different of a role is going to be under night vision. Yes, the green dot has less visible tint, but under nods, the green is on the right. There is much less light transfer through the scope as opposed to the red version on the left. Another thing to take note of, the reticle on the red version seems a little bit sharper to my eye. This could just be the 6MY is just a little bit too big. Maybe it's the color. Maybe the night vision doesn't like the green as much as the red. It could be a million different things. But despite the fact that the red version has more tint to the glass, it has much better light transmission as opposed to the green. Now, the night vision on this is a Gen 3 PVS 14, obviously in green phos, and I have it set to make the dot as sharp as possible. I tested a bunch of different optics that night, and this is just what these two particular ones look like. And to my eye, through the PVS 14, the red does look a little bit sharper. Here, just look at that. It's a big difference and something you will absolutely notice. So, if you want to run night vision, the red one's the surprisingly one to get. What if you are that one person on the planet that wants to run this as your main weapon sight on a super lightweight rig? Perfect, great. You want something really small and lightweight. You can find mounts for this thing. They run a standard footprint. You can get any height you want. And let's say you'll want to magnify this for whatever reason. Maybe you're zeroing it in. Maybe you want to extend it out at farther ranges. How is that going to look? Well, before we flip down the Holosun HM3X magnifier, going over the power lines here at 30 yards will show that both of these have the same amount of image distortion, which is honestly very, very little. They're both excellent. But again, you can clearly see that the green dot on the right has much less color tinting than the red. For many of you, that's a moot point. To me, I like my lenses to be as clear as possible. The green definitely appeases my autism in that regard, but under night vision, it performs much worse. So for me, I got to worry about one versus the other here a lot because I do plan on running night vision more frequently in the future. Flipping down, the magnifier behind the green dot shows a beautiful looking image and dot. Both are very sharp and clear. Flipping it down behind the red, the brightness is a little bit higher on the red, which is going to distort the reticle a little bit, but the image doesn't have the same sharpness or clarity. And to be completely frank with you guys, I filmed these two one right after the other. The red is still usable, but the green is just a lot better. And even though it's a giant 6MY dot, it still maintains a fairly high level of sharpness. There is a little bit of streaking at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, but we've seen that across a lot of different Holosun products. In fact, the red version does a little bit worse when we go straight to the 2MY dot. So if you really want to magnify this and you'll want to take it out to longer ranges, I'd probably go with like a 2MY green versus a 2MY red. Both these lenses were cleaned beforehand, and the red just starts to fall apart after a while, where the green seems to maintain a much higher stability with the overall sharpness and contrast. Again, just look at the view through the green. It's gorgeous. The red has just a little bit more tint, which will make things harder when you're in, I don't know, a treed environment like this and you're trying to pick up a target. All the greens sort of just blend together, where it's the tree at 10 yards, 250, or at 600 plus yards. Whereas with the green, you can very distinctively tell the difference between all three of those shades of greens at different distances. So there's more to it than just the color, ladies and gentlemen. I've had this dot for a little bit over a month and a half, and I have around 500 rounds of this. I have at least that much through the red version, and I have to say,
I like them both for different reasons. The 6 MOA dot, like I said here at about 10 yards on these paper targets, is very easy to pick up, even with a camera in between me, the optic, and the cardboard. It's got a beautiful large window, but we know that already about the EPS. The clarity of the glass and the lack of distortion really does make running this a real treat. And that's whether you're at 10 yards as seen here, or if we back our distance up to about 30 yards in these full-size IPSC paper targets. That 6 MOA dot, guess what, is still smaller than the overall head box, so you can still make a fairly precise shot as long as your zero is pretty good. Now, yes, the 2 MOA dot would allow you for technically a much more precise aiming point because it's going to be 1/3 the size, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make you a more accurate shooter. It just means that you could possibly get it a little bit more centered in your head box, let's say, if we're focusing on the head, but it's going to be a little bit harder to see. But again, 100% personal preference. For me, I'm going to choose the 6 MOA every single time I put it on a pistol. If I'm putting it on a carbine, I'm absolutely going to pick the 2 MOA dot every single time for that. Again, what's going to work best for you is what's going to work best for you and probably not anybody else. Like I said, I've had this for a while and I've ran it through a couple of different matches. This is the first match I ran it with, and it, guess what, served me extremely well. It didn't give me any hiccups whatsoever, even when the weather turned to this, a miserable wet mess. It was perfectly fine. If the lens got dirty, you wiped it off and you just kept going. You kind of wiped it off very similar to this. If you had rain on it, whether the front lens or the back lens, you could just take your finger, a shirt, if it was dry enough, a towel, wipe it, and you're good to go. Yeah, I mean, it still streaks a little bit, but you don't have to worry about getting in there and possibly having the emitter get some moisture behind it. This is actually a video I watched recently where an RMR, I think it might have been TFB TV, they had an RMR that had got moisture on the lens around the emitter, and it was blossoming out, and it really made the image look like crap. It's still usable, but it's not as good as possibly keeping the moisture out of the emitter. Honestly enough, that sounds kind of smart, right? That's why these enclosed pistol sights are as big of a thing as they are. That's why even Trijicon is getting into the game, because there is some merit to it. I do plan to continue running an EPS on my pistol for the foreseeable future, whether it's the 6 MOA dot or the 2 MOA/32 MOA circle. That's yet to be determined, but I'm leaning towards, if I had to keep one on there for long-term running and testing, it'd probably be the red 2 MOA dot. Even though I do prefer the size of the 6 MOA, the red just seems a little bit cleaner and sharper to my eye, especially under nods. But with that, let's get into my final thoughts.
Clearly, there's been a time warp because I'm sitting in the exact same seat wearing the exact same clothes with everything being the exact same configuration, but I hope you found this video informative. Ultimately, what I could say is there's a lot of differences between these two, more or less with just the color of the reticle than anything else. As you've seen in this video, the green reticle version has almost no tint to the glass, and under magnification looks a lot better. Why would you want to magnify this? I'm sure there's at least one person on the planet that wants to set up an EPS as their primary weapon sight and then possibly put a magnifier behind it for zeroing and or extended shooting. And if you do that, the green one is the one to get, but I'd absolutely get it in the 2 MOA version, not the 6 MOA. But if you plan on running it under night vision, the red is the one to get, specifically something with the 2 MOA dot. Under nods, you can clearly see in my footage that the red one has not just a sharper reticle, but much better light transmission coming through it, which is odd because when you get behind these during daylight hours with the naked eye, the green one looks substantially better to me. You might have a slightly different opinion and approach to this, or just findings from yourself. No two eyes are alike on the entire planet, ladies and gentlemen. So what I see and objectively see as being better than the other, you might see the exact opposite, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately. That's why I try to show you as much footage as I can so you can make an educated decision and factor for yourself. But the red one is definitely the one to get if you're planning on running night vision. So, a lot to break down with this. For me personally, the 6 MOA dot, whatever color I decide to get, is going to go on a pistol. The 6 MOA is beautiful. I'd probably end up going with the red because I do plan on running under night vision in the near future. And the 6 MOA, just my eye is drawn to it so much faster. I shoot extremely well with it. 6 MOA is definitely what I'd run on a pistol. If I was running this on a carbine, it would be just a standard 2 MOA dot. The circle on this, it has too much movement to it. You get behind it and it's slightly off. It bothers my eye, but that's a personal preference to me, not to you. Either which way, I don't think you can go wrong with either of these, but it would be nice to have something in the middle where maybe you have the light transmission and the clarity during the day and the reticle sharpness and brightness all confounded into one particular optic, and hopefully that'll be in the form of a gold dot eventually. Cough, cough, Holosun, cough, cough. I would love a gold dot version. I love gold. But for my 512, my eye just draws to that so quickly and easily. It's beautiful. But again, personal preferences. Guess what? Personalized to the individual using it. So there you have it. Hopefully this is wrapped up in a nice enough bow for you guys to be able to untwirl and figure out for yourself. But for me, definitely a 6 MOA dot for my pistol, 2 MOA dot for my rifle. And as much as I love how the glass looks magnified behind the green version, the red works better under nods, and the red to my eye just looks a little bit sharper, a little bit clearer, not during the daylight hours, but at night. Even though I've had laser corrective surgery, I still have a bit of an astigmatism. The green blossoms out bad. The red still maintains a slightly sharper edge to it, to me. So despite all this, I definitely go with the red. And I definitely go with the 6 MOA for a pistol again, 2 MOA for a carbine, whether it's your main optic or let's say an offset red dot, which is probably what you'd buy this for anyway. Definitely go with the 2 MOA if you're doing it for an offset. As far as solar powered versus non-solar powered, I know there haven't been a lot of reports of the solar panels failing, but I'm a big fan of just the less that can go wrong, the better. So I'd probably go with the non-solar powered version. So I would go, honestly, with neither of these. I'd go with a slightly different configuration. But hopefully you'll be able to buy the one and done optic for yourself from watching this video. No, this does not directly correlate to the carry version. I've only got my hands on them to shoot. And I will say that the carry 6 MOA red is gorgeous. I got to get my hands on one of those from my actual CCW because it's one of the nicest sights I've ever used. Probably nicer than these, but I'm not going to say that affirmatively until I get one for a review. So with that, a huge thank you to arftac.com, the guys over at Holosun, and all of you for making this video possible. As always, see you again next time.
And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe Star subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.